So the CosTube Symposium is kind of an informal and volunteer-run online way to get together and learn from each other and our peers. And this year, it's going to be in late August, and I'm going to do a video for it, but before I do that, there's a list of questions, kind of like get to know you questions, and so I'm going to answer them here. So it's 22 questions for Cozy 2022. What originally got you into costuming, cosplay, living history, etc.? So you might know this from other videos I've done, but I only have been in the sewing and costuming world for less than 3 years. And I only got into it as a way to sort of find home in my own body. This was before I had my first gender confirming chest reduction, and now I just am 3 weeks post-op for my second, and it was really crucial for me to feel like I was making progress on finding a way to be comfortable in myself. Now that I'm here though, I'm kind of here to stay. It feels like this is just a fun place to be now. I don't really have an excuse anymore. I'm just doing it for the fun. And of course all of you, it's fun to hang out with y'all. What project has taught you the most? So I think I've learned the most so far from the Slytherin undershirt. That was the project that I kind of basically entirely self-drafted. That was my first time doing that. It's the project where I did like 60 pin tucks on this incredibly sheer and very, very movable fabric, which was a questionable life choice, but I did it. I found a way to make it work. It was definitely a learning experience, and there's actually some things I want to change about it. I think I'm going to have a video coming up here where I take apart the bottom half of the sleeve and redo it, because I think it could be a little better. I think it could be just more. So I'm going to do that in the future. But I definitely learned a lot from that, but I also wanted to take a minute and kind of talk about the Slytherin project because I don't want it to be misconstrued. I approached making all of my little Slytherin ideas as like kind of a reaction to J.K. Rowling's transphobia, as a way to reclaim something from my childhood that meant a lot to me that she basically has ruined. And I specifically chose Slytherin not because I was ever sorted by her stupid website or whatever into Slytherin, but because that is the house that is canonically maligned, you know? Those are where all the evil people are. And J.K. Rowling sees trans people as evil. So I'm basically using this project as an opportunity to reclaim that. That is not how everyone is approaching this, and that is okay. Like, if you're done with Harry Potter forever, I do not blame you. Live free. That said, if you're not done with Harry Potter, please don't give J.K. Rowling any money. She supports multiple organizations financially that are doing incredible harm in the world, specifically to trans folks and trans children. If you don't know what I'm talking about, do a little bit of research. She has been an incredibly harmful component to the trans community and has given credence to some beliefs that do not need any credence, because they're wrong. Do you drape, draft, or use commercial patterns? Predominantly, I use commercial patterns. I like patterns from Black Snail patterns and Laughing Moon patterns. Those I find to be really, really useful. They are both like commercial patterns where it gives you clear instructions, but also fairly historically oriented. So there's a lot of, you know, historical practice written into the instructions. I would like to learn how to drape. I do not know how to drape. I have no idea how to drape a pattern. I know there's some books out there that I might look into. Yeah, I've done some drafting, not a lot. I'm pretty new at it. There's quite a lot I have left to learn. But yeah, as far as pattern companies go, I really can't recommend Black Snails enough. A lot of what I've done has just been Black Snails patterns. Are you team cut or trace your pattern pieces? So because I use a lot of patterns like from Black Snails, a lot of times they're just print your own and you tape them all together and cut them out. For those, I cut them out. There is one pattern where I bought it and it, you know, came on like really nice thick paper. That one I've traced because it feels sacrilegious to cut it. It's also from a company that has essentially gone under. I can't get another one. And it's a really lovely pattern, and I find myself being very precious towards it. So that one I've traced, I have not touched. If it's like just a tissue paper pattern, I just cut them. I don't know. I'm not particularly precious about most of them. There's definitely value in tracing them, especially if you're not sure you're gonna get the right size. You don't have to worry about like trying to regrade it yourself afterwards, but I'm kind of lazy. Pins or pattern weights? I use pattern weights because, again, kind of lazy. But not only just pattern weights, I use rocks because rocks are cool. So here's some of the rocks I have as my pattern weights. This is float copper, so it's really, really heavy. Can you see that? Yeah. So it's just like a chunk of copper. Doesn't look like copper, but it is. It's copper. It's a big chunk of metal. And this is a concretion. So this was formed on the bottom of a lake. There was a little bit of electrically charged ion in it. Sucked a bunch of stuff up next to it, and it just sort of grew and grew and grew over millennia. And you get some really cool patterns. This one's kind of a weird shape because it was stuck next to something. And this is also a concretion. This one's cut in half. You can see the inside here. It has a really cool design on it. These are all from my dad, who's a big rock hound, so thanks, Dad. I do also have some like normal pattern weights with a little felt on the bottom. These were from my grandma's collection. I do use them, but I find myself drawn to the rocks first because they're rocks and they're pretty and they're fun. But these are also useful. What is a skill you would like to learn? I would like to learn how to actually like create a pattern. Like, I've made things before without a pattern, but I don't know how to translate that into written form. Like, I can write out instructions, but I don't know how to like grade it for different sizes or do any of that. And I would really like to learn, actually, because there's quite a few times where like I know how to make for me, I don't know how to make for other people necessarily, and I would like to expand my options. And I would also just like to be able to share what I make. I think sometimes it's fun to be able to share a pattern, and I can't do that right now, so I'd like to learn. What fabrics are in an online basket that you would love to buy? So I have a huge to me, fabric stash because a friend of a friend basically was getting rid of a bunch of inherited stuff. So I don't really need more fabric. That said, I do have 4 meters of incredibly beautiful silk taffeta in my cart because I'm going to be making a Regency dress for a friend. But other than that, I should really be concentrating on using what I have and not buying things that I don't need. But there's a lot of beautiful things in the world, and temptation is real. Which era or genre would you still like to make a costume of? So I haven't done any like medieval or early modern stuff, and I would really like to. There's a few people on Instagram who make some really cool stuff, and I would totally like to like try out some versions. Not necessarily completely historically accurate, because some of the looks are not quite to my taste, but like definitely inspired by, especially like early modern Tudor stuff. I think it could be really fun to play around with. Someone on Instagram I really like is Medieval Tailor, so go check out their stuff if you want some early modern inspiration. Biggest sewing / crafting pet peeve. Oh my god, pins. So I had a glass-headed pin break the little glass-headed pin part off and ram itself backwards into my thumb. And like, you know, I'm used to getting stabbed with needles. Things happen. You get stabbed with needles a lot if you do sewing, whether it's the pins or the needles themselves. But this was the pin going backwards, so it was the blunt end of the needle that the glass-headed part normally sat on. And it went directly back into my thumb, and it really hurt. And you know what? That was like a month and a half ago, and I still have some sort of like little callus on it, and it actually still hurts, and I'm very annoyed. So I would like to lodge a complaint with the universe that should never happen. That's my pet peeve, is pins should never break. What is your favorite tool to use? So my favorite tool is my very fancy iron. You can, yeah, no, it's not in the shot. It is a gravity-fed Sapporo iron is the brand, and it's really, really heavy, and because it's gravity-fed, that means that the water tank hangs above, and it has like a clear tube, and the tube feeds the water directly into it, so you don't have to like refill it as long as your, yeah, it's still full. As long as your tank is like full, it's gonna stay full for a long time unless you do a ton of like steaming, but because it can hold like a gallon, probably more. But yeah, so you just fill that, and then it's like steam on demand. You never run out of water. It's really heavy, it presses things really nicely. It's a lovely iron. My mom bought it for me. Thank you, Mom. Yeah, I really like it. I will say it does heat the room up quite extensively, but that makes sense, right? It's an iron, it's heavy, it's metal. Metal distributes heat quite well. But it is a problem in summer, but the sacrifices we make for our art. What did you do or learn in the past year that you are most proud of? So this is actually, because I have a memory of a goldfish, I'm going to go back just 1 week. Last week I went to the local makerspace and they were doing like a brooch making class, and so I learned how to like punch copper, like a copper plate, punch it, and then saw out a pattern and set like a round flat stone into it, and it turned out really well. I don't really like feel the urge to wear the brooch. I'm actually going to give it to somebody, but the thing that's really exciting about it is it like opens up this whole new world of like possibilities for like accessories for costumes. I know that sounds very silly, but I'm really stoked because like I could make my own cufflinks, I can make my own like lapel pins, I can make all sorts of things. I can make like custom copper buttons with little snakes on them. I need to slow down, but I'm excited about that. I'm excited about like, I don't know, accessories are fun. It's fun to like plan beyond the fabric. Which costume would you like to revisit? Honestly, all of them. I don't think there's a single costume I've done so far, or even just like piece of clothing I've made so far, that I haven't thought by the end of it, okay, I can do this better next time. I think every single time I learn significantly. Because I've only been doing this for 3 years, like the leaps and bounds of learning that you do every time you make a new garment is substantial. I think I would like to make many of them over again, and I might. Like, I've only used my patterns for some of these things once and only ever once, beyond like a mock-up. So yeah, I might make some more. Maybe I'll make them better. What is the best tool you've ever invested in? High-powered magnet dish for pins. It's amazing. You just sort of lob the pin in its general direction and it sucks the pin up. And you can just like wave it on the rug below your feet and it'll just like suck the pin up. It is fantastic. High-powered magnet dish. What's the most satisfying technique? I would say pin tucks. They take an ice age, at least the way I did it, trying to get them on grain, but they are really satisfying and they just look really classy. I like the way they look. I want to put pin tucks on everything, even though it's a massive time sink. So, pin tucks. Do you pick a project and then procure materials, or do you collect materials and then let them speak to you? I do the first. I should do the second, but I do the first. Especially because, like, I don't know, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this pair of trousers. What's the perfect material for this pair of trousers? What I really do need to do now, I'm at that point, which I need to go, look at this lovely linen. What could I make with this lovely linen? I should do that one. I don't. What are your goals and plans moving forward? I want to add knowledge to the world as I go. I want to continue to support trans and non-binary and queer people in the communities that I'm in. I want to keep running grant funds. I've only done a couple of them so far, but there's going to be another one coming up where I am able to donate via donations, and via the Patreon I'm able to, you know, package little small grants and give them to trans and non-binary sewists. I've done that a few times and it's been really rewarding. It's not that much money. It's usually just $50 or $75 a person, but I'm able to give out, you know, 4 or 5 of them. I want to keep doing that, and I just want to like keep being a force of good in the world as much as possible, and yeah, it's really sappy. That's all I want. Do you have any sewing assistants, aka pets? Okay, you know I do. You know I do. I have 2 kitties. They are long-haired orange cats, both of them. They are litter mates, and they sometimes don't know that they are 2 cats. They think that they are one giant cat. They are extremely good, but they are extremely long-haired, and so their little furs get everywhere. Everywhere. But they're so cute. Their names are Big Face and Small Face, because when we first got them, they were foster kittens, and that was the only way we could tell them apart, was one of them had a slightly larger face. They're also like obsessed with wool. It's really funny. If I'm working on a wool project and like leave it on my ironing board or whatever overnight, they will, like, I'll find them just like sitting on the ironing board on top of the fabric, licking it, just like grooming it. They're such big weirdos. They're really weird. I love them. Do you have any bad sewing habits? I have a lot of bad sewing habits. So I don't always read the pattern instructions all the way through. That's like item number one you're supposed to do, is get the pattern, read it all the way through before you start, even your mock-up. Just like get a lay of the land. I don't always do that. I don't always do that. Also, I'm a bit of an improviser sometimes, and I don't always go in with a full-fledged plan. And like, I would say 80% of the time it's really fun because you just sort of follow the whims of your creative designs or whatever and just see what happens and go with the flow. 20% of the time it's a big mess and I regret everything. So I don't even know if that's a bad habit or just like who I am as a human being, but that's a thing that happens. Machine sewing. Barefoot, socks, or shoes on the pedal? Barefoot, baby! Risk it all! Live dangerous! Do you put pins in parallel to the seam line that you're sewing, or do you pin perpendicular? So this is something that I had to learn. I did not know this. When I started putting my pins in parallel because I would just use that to like mark where I was going to sew essentially on the machine, or even by hand. It's much better to put them in parallel because you can, if you're feeling gutsy, run right over the parallel pins with your machine, and it usually doesn't break the needle. And even if you decide not to do that, it's much easier to pull them out as you go if they're parallel. They're just like in grabbing range. So I did not know that going in, and I learned that, and it was a great trick. So if you didn't know that, now you know. What do you like to listen to while you sew? I'm a big fan of podcasts. I almost always have a podcast on if I'm doing something where I don't need to read or like see something with audio. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and that's oftentimes why I have to completely mute the the recording of whatever I'm sewing. It's just like some podcast is blathering on in the background, which is fine. I just put music over it. But there's almost always a podcast. But while I was sewing the Fancy Historical Bathrobe Banyan, still don't know how to pronounce that, I actually listened to 2 of the novellas of the Murderbot Diaries, and those were really good. I recommend them. Tea, coffee, or chocolate? Yes. Ta-da! Okay, that is 22 questions for 2022. And this is like my little pre-cozy symposium, CosTube symposium video where y'all get to know me, and maybe I'll get to know you in the comments. So hit the comments. Tell me your answers to some of these questions. I'd love to know. Do you use your machine pedal barefoot? Are you a chaos gremlin? Tell me. Also, if you're new over here, please feel free to hit subscribe. I'd love to see you more often. I also have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/bequeermakestuff. It gets you access. The lowest tier is very affordable. It's just $3. It gets you access to the Discord I have, and that is full of trans and non-binary and trans non-binary and queer and allied people who are all working together and dealing with stuff and making stuff and chatting about stuff. And it's a really great space on the internet, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for a place to belong. It's a place close to my heart. It also gets you access to posts that I make and behind the scenes stuff and polls and questions I throw out and stuff like that. Otherwise, I will see you at the next video I make, which will be coming out in August. So see you then. Until next time, be queer and make stuff. Bye bye.